Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. And it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. And Geoff Mosher is in the house today for a Mosher Monday edition of Football at 4. The Eagles lose 17-11, Geoff Mosher. And, of course, when they lose, all hell breaks loose. The overreactions come in. But this was a game that they were the underdog in. However, are we frustrated that this appeared to be a winnable game and they let it slip out of their hands?
Well, yes and yes. I mean, I feel like every single NFL game is filled with every close game within a possession or two are rife with the kind of mistakes or penalties or missed opportunities that you could say the other team should have, would have, could have. And certainly the Eagles, I mean, you can find three right there: a blocked field goal, a botched kind of fourth and goal play call or whatever you want to call it, and then obviously a touchdown rescinded by a penalty by stepping out of bounds. But I imagine if you were with the 49ers right now and in their film room, you're looking at some plays that they felt were left on the field. Go back to the first drive. I mean, Garoppolo, I thought it was a bad Garoppolo pass, probably could have been better, but it was really Debo just dropping a screen right on second down or third down there where the blocking was in front of him to at least get first down, if not more. And who knows what that drive looks like if it's different. And I'm sure the 49ers feel the same way. The bottom line to me is, Mike, the 49ers are a team that were playing their second straight road game. They didn't even go home. They were in West Virginia all week long. They came in here. They had about as rough of a first 5 to 7 minutes, first two drives as it can go, but they hung in there. And then they flipped the script and they became the aggressor, both defensively and with their blocking up front. And, they took control of the game. The Eagles did not score from their field goal on their second drive in the first quarter until their touchdown in the fourth quarter. That, let's be honest, the 49ers were playing very soft zones at that point, up 2 touchdowns, and they let the Eagles kind of run down the field there, and we're happy to let the clock run down as the Eagles were doing it.
Obviously, Sirianni is getting a lot of flack today. I mean, he said afterwards, I wish I called some better plays. It's the old Andy Reid, better job. I need to do a better job. I got to put bettors in better positions. But isn't he right? Like, did he get too cute? Did he try to be too cute in this game?
I think you can make the argument that he did, Mike. But I have mixed emotions about how he's kind of approaching that play call. I think most of us appreciate the honesty, the fact that he said he didn't like the call in retrospect. But then the question I would have, there's a reason most head coaches don't say what Nick Sirianni said. It's not that they're necessarily afraid of the backlash or afraid to be honest. It's that you don't want to always judge a play call by its outcome. There are sometimes good plays that are not going to work. There are sometimes bad plays that do work. So what I would want to know from Nick Sirianni, Mike, is he upset with that play call because it didn't work? Because when he called it, you have to think, it's a play they repped in practice. It's a play they were ready to unveil. You have to think that that was called for a reason. And if the reason was it was a bad play call because of the defensive look, then why aren't you taking a timeout? You clearly thought the play was going to work at the snap. So what is it in retrospect that you don't like about the play other than the fact that it didn't work?
Yeah.
That's where I would want to know the answers more to.
All right, well, I can give you my reasons because the Philly special play didn't have anybody going out for a pass. It didn't even appear that Hurts knew that he was supposed to go out for the pass. He kind of stood there and was like, oh, wait, you want me to go into the corner? There was nobody running a route on that play. It appeared that the one play looked like it was supposed to be a shovel pass on the inside that Hurts just never shoveled it, and then he just tried to follow almost like an option play. So you're right. It wasn't so much the calls. It was the design of the play that, to me, looked like the breakdown.
Well, then that's where we all have to look. I don't know that Nick Sirianni had his press conference today, and he said, look, when I have a wide receiver throwing the ball, I don't want to have multiple options because then there's confusion, then there's panic. And even though Greg Ward played quarterback, he hasn't played it in quite a while. So that I sort of understand that explanation. But if you're going to then create a play where
Then how
there's
about
only
somebody? Anybody?
well,
He had nobody.
that's my point is he now in retrospect saying that I shouldn't design plays with only one option? Because it didn't sound like that part of it he was upset about. It sounds like he was trying to rationalize why that play only had one option. And so what is it again? I would ask him, what is it then you're saying is bad about the play call? If it's the play design, then I would have to say, well then why did you design it?
Right. Well, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, but do you agree? Like the Philly special play, okay, I listened to the radio broadcast. We played the play. Mike Quick, as soon as he saw Ward on the field, said, this is a razzle-dazzle play. I mean, almost everybody understood. Now, Ward, you could look at it from two ways, I guess, right? You're in the red zone. Ward is a sure-handed guy. Maybe you like him in the red zone, okay? Fine. But essentially, everybody said the same thing. Ward is never out on the field. What's going to happen here? Okay, razzle-dazzle, and that's what ends up happening. That being said, there was nobody running a route. Like, Hurts didn't know there was no drag, nothing. So that play, boom. But the two other plays before that, those plays were not designed very well either, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, well, the play before that was another play with very limited options, right? There was, I think Zach Ertz was rolling. Zach Ertz had Fred Warner beat by a half step. And I think when you watch that play, you realize there's a chance to get a touchdown. Now, Warner's a great linebacker. So the only throw you can make in that spot is if you're throwing it to the corner, the right corner of the end zone, where either Ertz catches it or it's out. And
I thought Ertz had a step if he just let him into that back right corner.
Right. That's a play that you would hope Jalen Hurts looks at and says, next time we run that play, I'm just going to throw it to that spot in the right corner where only Zach Ertz can get it. And then, there was on one of the plays, there was a shovel built in, I think for Zach, maybe the play after that, where he didn't shovel it. And I guess I can understand why. There was a lot of traffic there. Yeah. I'm not sure that was smart to shovel. And then obviously he's got a drift to the right side. And because of the limited options, there was really nothing to do there. That's another example where maybe the design itself wasn't good. And then if now we're talking about play design, now we're saying, man, it seemed like all the play designs look good against Atlanta, but when you played a real defense, your play designs were not exactly top notch.
Well, let's talk about that, Mosher. Because last week, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, check out the Inside the Birds podcast. The new one is out today. Now, last week there was a lot of, not criticism, but, they didn't take any shots down the field. Well, they didn't really need to. This week was it seemed that everything was down the field. Whereas I felt that going into this game, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert had a chance to have some big yards in this game. They didn't utilize, to me, you're playing a team that's better than you. Go with Old Faithful. Go with what you know. Go with the veteran guys, and boom, try to use those guys. They only had 4 targets in the game. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah, I thought that was very curious. If you look at the collaboration of the first 2 weeks, I know Next Gen Stats has put this out there that something like 66% of Jalen Hurts' throws that are beyond the line of scrimmage are on the right side of the field. So not only are they we're predictably going where they're going, you can tell where it is, but it seems like all of the vertical stuff is not crossers, not posts, but sideline stuff. You saw it work to Watkins, almost worked to Rager, but as far as using the middle of the field, that's not been an area where the Eagles have really attacked. Even going back to the Atlanta game, they just didn't need to, but it's just not an area that they've attacked a whole lot so far.
Yeah, I know, he was criticized for not taking shots. It almost was like, well, they didn't see us take shots on the field in the first game. Let's try to see if we, put that out there this time and catch them off guard. That didn't work. All right, so Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. I want to get to a lot here. Brandon Graham, obviously, out for the year. That was confirmed today. What are some of the options now? They're not going to be exciting, but do you play Sweat more? Does Kerrigan get more? Do you try to do something creative like Dallas did and find a athletic guy and play him at defensive end? I mean, does Avery get more snaps there? How do they go about trying to replace maybe the heart and soul of this team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they're already doing some creative things already with Jannard Avery, using him in a way that he's never been used before, but it's not really as a pass rusher. I think the thing that you noticed when Brandon Graham came out is that Barnett and Sweat have obviously been splitting reps over left tackle while Brandon Graham lines up over right tackle. Well, they moved Barnett over right tackle and kept Sweat at left tackle. But the more fascinating thing to me, although it's not really fascinating, it's pretty consistent with what they've done so far, is the fact that Josh Sweat only played 28 snaps. Now, Nick Sirianni said today that a lot of that had to do with them being in heavier personnel. They like Sweat against the pass rush, or as a pass rusher, I should say. And so you saw Ryan Kerrigan played more snaps than Josh Sweat. Think about that. The veteran, who's also known as a pass rusher, first and foremost, who's here on a one-year deal, played more snaps against the guy they just signed to a 3-year extension. And I've said this many times, and some people don't like the fact that I say it, but it's just truth that the Eagles in the past have limited Josh Sweat's snaps because of his history of knee injuries. He's never played more than 38% of the team's snaps until last week when he played close to 50. I forget what it was. So maybe that was a sign they're ready to play him more. But this could be interpreted as a sign that they're not ready to play him too much more, because he obviously didn't. He was out-snapped by two other DNs.
So he signs that deal. You would think that they're almost, okay, that's a sign of we're ready to kind of unleash him a little bit more. But that didn't happen.
Sort of. I mean, look, the deal it seems like a lot of money, but I'm sure once you start seeing the market get reset in a year or 2 or 3 years, it's going to be money for a really good situational pass rusher. Okay, and that's probably what it'll wind up being, and that's how they've always viewed him. I don't know that they see him as durable enough to be a starting defensive end who's going to play 65, 70% of the snaps and excel in run defense as much as he does in pass defense, like Brandon Graham. I mean, it's hard to find those Brandon Grahams.
All right, let's go to Brandon Brooks and that whole situation, because it's a little murky. They didn't say they're putting him on injury reserve. They probably are. He's not a season-ending injury, so he's going to be out at least a couple of weeks. We think it's a strained pec. So let's start with the injury to Brooks. Do you get the sense that he will play again this year?
That's hard to say. I imagine he will. You know, if it's a pec strain, which you kind of get the feeling that it is because they're not ruling him out for the year. If you look similarly at Javon Hargrave, he had a pec strain on the first day of training camp last year. Training camp's about 4 weeks long. He missed pretty much all of training camp. So you're already looking at an injury that takes about 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Now, I don't know the particular. This is just something in general that you hear, that obviously with it being a pec injury, it's hard to lift weights and keep yourself in, the strength conditioning program that you're normally involved with. So when he does come back, we have to see if he's ready to, if he's going to be in tip-top shape and ready to just step in there and play. If you remember Javon Hargrave, not only did he also tweak a hammy when he came back last year, but he just wasn't himself for the first 3 to 4 weeks. Certainly not what you've seen these first 2 weeks. I mean, he has been probably the best defensive player on the team, maybe the best player on the team through the first 2 weeks of the season. So you're thinking like 4 to 6 weeks recovery, an extra 1 to 2 weeks of getting your conditioning and everything back, and that becomes 2 months of the season.
So in his place, Landon Dickerson jumped in. I know he had barely practiced with Lane Johnson. Johnson said, I've never practiced with him until this week. I would imagine they're going to go with Dickerson, though, as the replacement right off the bat instead of, say, Nate Herbig.
Yeah, I would think so. Now, I've only watched the I just finished, before I came on with you, wrapping up watching the offensive tape, and of course, with still no all 22, the only thing we can really look at is the TV copy. But it's pretty clear that Landon Dickerson struggled at times, mostly in pass pro, a few run blocks as well. But he struggled. He got pushed back. He gave up leverage. He plays high, which means like when you get out of your stance, you get raised up too much, and that allows you to lose your balance against big guys on the defensive line. And the Niners it's tough. I'm not going to kill the kid. I mean, this is not exactly ideal situation. You come in the middle of the game against the 49ers, who have a very good defensive front and were very aggressive. So I would imagine the Eagles will give him a game, more practice, a game, get him in there and not panic about it. But, Nate Herbig is a guy who played well at the end of last year. He got better. And then, of course, Jack Driscoll is a guy they trained to basically be an interior offensive lineman also this year. And he'll be off IR, you would imagine, if everything goes well, I guess next week, right? 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens there. But of course Landon Dickerson will get the first look based on what they expected out of him when they drafted him in the second round.
By the way, Eagles have placed Zach Ertz on the reserve COVID list, so that just came down a couple seconds ago. This is Football at 4. How did the Eagles replace Brandon Graham? How did they replace Brandon Brooks? The injury bug. I guess if they were going to lose guys on the offensive line, Dickerson was drafted for that reason. He could play almost every position on the line, so you would anticipate he is the first guy. I want to ask you about Derek Barnett and the penalties and how they can do anything, considering that they just lost Brandon Graham. It's almost like you can't discipline him after you've lost Graham because you now probably have to ask him to even play more.
Yeah, and I don't know that they would have disciplined him anyway. Nick Sirianni has been pretty consistent on what happened prior to his arrival. He doesn't really consider, he's called it a blank slate. But he did make an interesting comment about, saying that this isn't just on Derek Barnett, it's on the coaches. It's on him to coach the coaches, to make sure the coaches are coaching Derek Barnett to not play recklessly. And so we'll see if that makes a difference, because he can say that there's a blank slate with him, but there's not a blank slate with the Eagles fans and people who have covered the team for a while and seen that he's got a track record of just bad penalties, personal foul penalties.
Zach Berman tweeted out he has 6 unnecessary roughness and 2 roughing the passers. That's 8 15-yard penalties he has in his career.
Now, I would have to go back and look at the 2 roughing the passers. I feel like one was bad because I remember us talking about it, but you know how those tend to be, you can do everything right and you still get flagged for unnecessary. But I would say the 6 ones that you're saying that are not on the quarterback, that's just like 3 is too many in a, you know what I'm saying? 6, you've got to have the discipline when you're, especially when you're trying to get back into a game or you're home or whatever. You're just trying to win football games, and these penalties are backbreakers for teams, to not hit a guy when he's out of bounds. Those are the worst kind of penalties.
That one yesterday was egregious.
Yeah, absolutely. It was as bad gets.
All right, so I want to get your take on now the Wallace penalty too. That one, but to get them back to back, that really. Fletcher Cox admitted after the game that the Wallace penalty kind of took the air out of the balloon. He essentially said that's the kind of call that really takes the wind out of your sails, or whatever term he used. But it was 3rd and 15 when that happens, and it goes to first down, and then they get another first down. They end up kicking a field goal, 17-3. The other question that a lot of people are asking about is the use of the timeouts. Now, he said we would do that again. We're just so trained to hold those tight ends, those timeouts till late in the game. If they get the stop, now the play clock thing, I don't think people made a big enough deal about that, but that was a factor too. That went to 0. But if they don't get the 3rd and 1, they had plenty of time even without the timeout. So do you have a problem with them burning the timeouts earlier instead of holding them?
No, you need 2 scores at the time, so you need time for 2 scores, right? And you've got to be able to get that time when you can. I don't necessarily like waiting in that situation, because then you're giving the opponent at that time the opportunity to dictate play calling and take the clock down even more. So I have no problem with it. I think you see that more now than you did 5, 10, 15 years ago. I think that's one of the things that some of the head coaches are starting to think more progressively on in the league.
All right. The Eagles lose that game 17-11. Now they'll play Monday night against Dallas. So obviously this turns into a very interesting game. 1-1 against 1-1 on the road, and this schedule's brutal. That's why you look back at this game, and your point about San Francisco is a good one early, but a winnable game because it's at home. You had a chance at home to really go up 17-0 in this game. If you're on the one, you can't get one in. The touchdown that was Rieger's that got called back, that's another play that, if you get those 2, it's a wholly different game. But now you're 1-1, and you've got Dallas, Kansas City. All of a sudden, it looks like a pretty good Carolina team. Tampa Bay, a pretty good Raiders-looking team. This 5-game stretch is pretty brutal all of a sudden.
It is very brutal. It's tough. And a lot of, it's the Raiders game is on the road. Carolina game's on the road. Dallas, obviously, on the road. And then, of course, when you do come home, you merely have to face last year's champs and the year before Super Bowl champs.
Yeah.
So Going to be it could be a very rocky stretch here for the Eagles. We'll see.
Football at 4, Geoff Mosher at Geoff Mosher NFL, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And make sure you check out the Inside the Birds podcast with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. Mosher's back on Wednesday's edition of Football at 4. And, of course, today, Nick Sirianni breaking it down that Brandon Graham is done for the year, and Brandon Brooks will be likely out for a long period of time. We don't know how long, but he is not done for the season as of yet. They are the big stories coming out of the NovaCare complex today. Although, did Sirianni switch the time of his day after? Is he like 2:45 now? Because I don't get that email anymore.
Apparently, it was last week. It was like 2:30, 2:35. It used to be like noon, right?
Yeah, it was.
Nice and early in the day.
Andy was noon, Chip was noon, and Peterson were noon.
Yeah,
It's really putting a wrench in my day.
A new regime, my friend.
All right, Jeff, take care, man.
All right, take care, you too.
Mosher Monday edition of Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco is here to break down everything that happened from the game and moving forward against Dallas. And, of course, that's all right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.